But I just want to say, relax. The seats do recline. There's no shame. Like, recline, enjoy them, have fun. And we are in a series called Awkward Jesus, which hopefully is a bit of a fun series. Like, when we were thinking this up, we were chatting a long time about this, and we thought, wouldn't it be fun to explore some really awkward passages? Like, you have a moment you're out with somebody and they just say something and it's so awkward that the entire conversation stops. It's like everyone turns and looks at that person like, what did you even say? Well, this happens all the way through the Bible when we read the stories of Jesus. He'll be going through life, he'll be chatting with someone, and he says something which is so awkward. And I'm like, just reading it, I feel awkward. I'm like, I can't believe you just said that. But I think that so often when we read these stories, when we read these passages, we don't know how to deal with them. We don't know what to say or what to do. And so we just kind of keep on going. We pretend he didn't say it, and we hope that it doesn't matter. But we thought, wouldn't it be fun to slow it down a little bit, to really dig into these sayings, into these teachings, into these moments. And I believe that as we do, what we will find is hope, what we'll find is love, and what we'll find is faith. And I want to be honest with you today. The passage that I'm going to read, I mean, it might well be the most awkward of all of the awkward Jesus passages. I have struggled. I have wrestled. I have given up on this sermon 3 times this week and said, you know what, I just can't do it. I can't explain it. I don't get it. I don't know that I can tell people about this. And I've never heard anyone preach on it either, because I think that there's other preachers who are like me and they're like, you know what, this is just too awkward. There's no way that I can explain this in a public setting and do it justice. But at the same time, I don't want to have that kind of Edam faith, you know, the bits with holes in the middle. I don't want to just pick the bits out of the Bible that I like and ignore the bits that I don't like. I don't think that's how it works. I think that we have to take it all as it comes. Yeah. And so I refuse to just go, we're going to skip this week, we're going to go to another one, which will be really easy. I talk about blessings because we love blessings, don't we? Amen. I'm like, no, let's actually dig in deep. Let's see what it is that God wants to say to us through this. So can I get a drum roll, please? What we're going to look at is that time Jesus called a foreign woman a dog. I mean, it's so awkward. Why would he even do that? I'll be honest, I need to pray before we even get going, if that's okay. So Lord God, honestly God, there are times when I read the Bible and I'm just like, what's happening? What are you doing? And I don't understand it. But God, that's why I don't read the Bible on my own. I read it with you. That's why I look to you to be my guide. And that's why here as we are together, we're not just looking for clever words. We're not just looking for easy things to understand. We want to know you. We want to draw closer to you. So God, open this up. Bring it to life. Show us something of your heart for us. Show us something of what this means for each and every single one of us in our day-to-day lives. Lord, change us as we read your word and explore your words for us. Amen. So, we're going to look at Matthew 15, which is where this is found. And as you're turning there, I want to just give you a little bit of background, a little bit of understanding. But let me start with a question. The question is, what is the greatest country in the world? Wales, America, England, Germany. We live in a world, I think, which is pretty PC. Like, we might say, okay, we think England is better, but actually, to be honest, only one person said England, and there's a lot of English people here. We're kind of more likely to go, actually, I think America's doing better than us. Or go, actually, do you know what, I've been to Wales, and it's really nice there. They got great man. We're more likely to say someone else. Because we're so PC, we don't want to offend people. But the ancient world wasn't like this at all. Like, literally every country was like, we are the greatest country in the world, and it is our right as a country to take over and destroy and enslave other countries, and they should be honored that we choose to enslave them, because we are that awesome. Like, this is This was the mindset back in the ancient world. The Greeks, they coined this word barbarian. And the reason why they made this word is because they would go around other countries and they'd be like, these guys are so dumb. They're so stupid. Everything that they say, it just sounds like bar, 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 bar. So they started calling them barbarians as like an insult to make fun of them because the Greeks were superior and everyone else was inferior. They called the Persian, their rival empire, a bunch of softies who wore too much perfume. Like they were rude, they were offensive, and they were aggressive to other nations. And Israel was no different. Israel believed that they were the chosen ones. That God looked across the whole world and said, there is no finer people than the people of Israel. I will make them special. I will call them out. They are the greatest. And so Israel would look at other nations and say, do you know what? You're inferior. You're not as good as us. You know, we're holy, we obey God, we're clean. You're dirty, you're ignorant, you're stupid. And they had some very famous encounters of this. You may have heard of the way that the Jews would deal with the Samaritans. They believed that the Samaritans had distorted the Bible, that they'd watered down their faith, they'd mixed it up with pagan worship and other gods, and so they wouldn't even want to talk to a Samaritan because to even be around you would make me dirty because I'm just too good and you're too low. And there was all these other nations around them, Gentiles they called them. They had this word Gentiles, which basically meant everybody who wasn't as good as us. You were a Gentile. And one of the ways that they would talk about Gentiles is by calling them dogs. We are the children of God, and you, if you're not a Jew, are a dog. And it was really, really common, and it's really a strange thing for me to understand because I don't like offending people. Like the other day, I was walking down the street, and this woman wasn't looking where she was going. She walked into me, almost knocked me over, and then I apologized to her for her walking, because I don't want to offend her. Is anybody else like that? You just don't want to offend anybody. I went for a beard trim a few months ago. I was like, could you just do something good? It's getting a little bit much. People starting to give me money as I walk down the street, and maybe I need to tidy it up. So I went in and I was like, can you just trim it, make it look like something macho, yet at the same time something tidy? And the guy's like, I've got you, I can do this, it's perfect. And he starts cutting, and halfway through I start to see like a wedge in my beard, and I'm like, has this guy literally never cut a beard before? And I'm looking at him, I'm like, he's very clean shaven, maybe he's never encountered a man with a beard. And as I'm looking, it's like I'm horrified as he's making my beard look worse and worse and worse. I'm like, I can't even hide this. This is my face. I can't just put a veil on. Like, that's weird, right? I have to go out in public with this. So what do? I'm English. At the end, I thank him, I pay him, and I book another appointment. Like, what? Because I don't want to offend him. We don't want to offend people. But at the same time, I think we also live in a world where people are more offended by absolutely everything than at any point in history. We're terrified of offending people, and yet everybody's now offended. And we hold on to offense as well. Like somebody hurts us, somebody says something, somebody puts us down, and we hold on to that. And you're like, it hurt me. And I think that we think that there's some kind of power in holding on to offense, but there isn't. It's weakness. And you're like, but Ben, you don't know what they said. You don't know what they did to me. You don't know how they made me feel. And I'm like, well, if you liked it so little, why are you still holding on to it? Why can't you let it go? We are an offended nation where everybody is offended by everything, and yet at the same time we're afraid to offend anybody. It's this weird paradox that we live in, and it's so different to the way that they were in the Old Testament. So I want to read this passage because when we look at Jesus, and when we look at the way that he speaks to people, he's not afraid to offend you. He's not afraid to say it as he sees it. Like, There's this one time he's speaking to the Pharisees and he calls them like a brood of vipers. It's like, you guys are snakes. He says it to their face. He doesn't write an email afterwards. You know, it doesn't kind of come. He says it right to their face. You are snakes. And it's offensive. Jesus isn't worried about offending you. He's not going to hold back on talking about heaven and hell. He's not going to not mention sexuality and purity. He's not going to stop talking about forgiveness and anger and the way that you live your life because he's worried that it might upset you. He speaks directly. And he speaks the truth because he wants you to experience love and life and fullness and faith. So he will confront anything that he sees in you that's going to stand in the way of you becoming everything that you could be. And this is the lens that I want you to have as we read these words. So Matthew 15, we're going to go straight in at 21. If you found it in your Bibles, it's also on the app on your phone. Jesus has just fed 5,000 people with a few loaves and fishes, and he's tired. He's had enough. He's had a long day in the office. So he decides he's going to have like a mini vacation. He heads off on a camel or a horse or something, but he heads off to Lebanon, just outside of Israel, and he goes away. And it says that he goes to be away from people. Like he's tired, he wants to retreat, he needs a bit of me time. He's getting his introvert on. And this is where we enter verse 21. It says, "Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre and Sidon," that's Lebanon. "A Gentile woman who lived there came to him, pleading, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely.' But Jesus gave her no reply, not even a word." What do you do when you cry out to God and you get nothing back? What do you do when you're scared and you're desperate and you're frustrated and you need help and you call on the name of Jesus and Jesus doesn't reply? This woman, she keeps on calling out again and again. And the disciples, they urge him to send her away. "Tell her to go away," they said. "She is bothering us with all of her begging." So imagine this woman. She has no education. She is around a group of racist, intolerant, bigoted men. And she's on her own, like a foreign woman would never go and be alone with a group of Jewish men. It just would never happen, but she's scared. She's afraid, she's worried for her daughter, and she wants help, and she's desperate. And so it's like she goes into the lion's den. She goes into this place which would have been so intimidating, which would have been so scary for her, and yet she takes a deep breath, and she sucks it up, and she comes back, and she keeps on calling out to Jesus. Like to the extent that she is irritating to everyone around her because she refuses to stop calling to Jesus. But how will Jesus respond? Jesus calls to the woman, "I was sent only to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel." In other words, I'm not here for you. Ouch. But she came and she worshipped him. She pleaded again, "Lord, help me." And Jesus responded, "It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs." Just to be clear, children means Israel, it means the Jews. Dogs means foreigners. I mean, okay, didn't Rachel lead worship beautifully today? Yeah. Didn't she? She did, didn't she? Rachel is American, she's from California. Imagine if Rachel at the end of the service said, "Actually, Ben, I've had a bit of a tough week, I could do with some prayer." And I turned around and said, "Rachel, I don't pray for people who aren't English, you dog." Like Jacob would have something to say, right? That's not okay. That's not all right. That's not just awkward. That's wrong. That's offensive. That should stir something up inside of you saying we shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't talk like this. Rachel shouldn't have to put up with somebody saying that to her. She should get prayer if she wants prayer. Like, what even is Jesus thinking in this moment? It's horrible. What would you do if you were Rachel? What would you do if you were this Samaritan woman? Would you be like, that's it, I'm going to take him on. No one talks to me like that. Listen to me, Mr. Jesus, in your Birkenstocks and your robe. Let me tell you, would you get aggressive? Or would you maybe walk away and then 20 minutes you'll suddenly come up with this thing and be like, that's what I should have said. That was the retort that I needed in that moment when Jesus was calling me a dog. Or would you become the keyboard warrior? Would you write a review of Jesus on Facebook? TripAdvisor, Jesus, 1 star. He called me a dog. Like, what would you do? How would you respond? I would want to do something. I wouldn't want to take that. Like, no one calls me a dog. Unless it's that kind of nice American dog thing, then that works, right? Hey, dog. Like, that would be okay. But, like, not if you're English, don't say that to me because it's weird. And we don't talk like that. But I would want to stand up for myself. I'd want to stand up for you. It's not right. It's not okay. But this woman, she doesn't take off her earrings and square up. Instead, she says these words. She stands strong, confident, and kind, and she says, "That's true, Lord. But even dogs are allowed to eat the scraps that fall beneath their master's table." Wow. Even dogs eat the scraps. She's like, even just a scrap from you. Even your leftovers, Jesus. Even the little bit that's wasted on the side. I'll just take that. I'll have anything that you've got. Call me a dog, that's fine. I'll have it. Because I know that one scrap from you can change everything. And Jesus says, dear woman, like I just want to hear I want you to hear the tone change in that one sentence. Dear woman, beloved woman, woman who I love, my dear woman, your faith is great. Your request is granted. And it says that her daughter was instantly healed. And I can just imagine the look on the disciples' faces as suddenly the whole situation was turned upside down. Like they would have been with him that whole time. This away weekend, this retreat, this irritating Lebanese woman coming, and they're like, Jesus, like, let's just get rid of her. We know that you're here for us. We know that you're here for the Jews. We know that you're here looking after our people. And we know that you're not here for her. Like, just get rid of her. And then Jesus would have been like, hey, get away from us, you dog. And the disciples would have been like, yeah, you go, Jesus. Like, yeah, get away from us, dog. Like, they would have been like right there. Like, yeah, this is exactly what's supposed to happen because we're superior. And we know that we're better than them. And we know that we've got it all sorted. And we know that we're living our lives right. And we know that they're messy. We know that they're dirty. We know that they're not okay. And who does she even think that she is coming in here demanding healing? She should know better. Tell her to get away. And I can imagine them all kind of like high-fiving and being all kind of happy and looking all smug. And then all of a sudden Jesus is like, your request is granted. Dear woman, your faith is great. And they'd be like, wait, what just happened? It's like we were going in this direction, Jesus, and we knew what we're doing, and then you suddenly switched on us. And they were confused. And I bet they were frustrated. I bet they had a lot of questions that they wanted to ask. And to be honest, when I read this, I've still got a lot of questions as well. I'm like, what is even happening here? And there's something, I think, that is happening which is deeply significant. I want to give you just a few interesting facts about this story that if you're taking notes, these are worth writing down. Because this story is unique in the Bible. There's not another story that's like it. The first thing I want you to realize in this story is that this woman is the only person in the entire Bible to have an argument with Jesus and win. That's amazing. Not the Jewish leaders, not the priests, the rabbis, not the most intelligent people, not the rich people, not the not so rich people. She's the only one to ever win an argument with Jesus. What's that about? That's interesting. Second thing that I think is really interesting, it's worth noting down. She's the only person in the entire Bible that Jesus points at and says, she's got great faith. No one else in the Bible gets that term. No one else gets that accolade. She's the only person who's described as having great faith. Fascinating. A Lebanese woman. Not the Jews, not the people who have followed Jesus their whole life. This woman is just coming out of the blue. She's got great faith. And the third thing that's worth noting is that this moment changes Jesus' ministry. Everything before this point in the book of Matthew has been about helping the Jews, about healing the Jews, about feeding the Jews, about teaching the Jews. And then Jesus goes from this encounter and he goes back to Lake Galilee, but he doesn't go back to the same size. He stays on the Gentile side of the lake and he starts doing miracles now with people who weren't the Jews. He starts healing them. He starts casting out demons from them. He then feeds the 4,000 Gentiles. His ministry shifts and changes, and it goes from just being about his people to suddenly it's opened up to the rest of the world. How? Why? What happened? What did we miss? What was it about this story that seemed to have all of these effects that changed things so much? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. But I want you to think about it, and I want you to decide what you think the answer is. Because this provokes more questions in me than it gives me answers. And I'll tell you some things that I do know, some things that I do take away from this, and I'll tell you some things that other people have said. And maybe we can, between us, get to some kind of answer within this crazy, messy story. But my first question is simply this: was Jesus a racist? And maybe you're like, well, of course he wasn't. But I don't think it's good enough to just be able to say that because we want that to be the answer. We have to start by reading what actually happens in the Bible and then taking it out from there. So what was Jesus doing calling a foreign woman a dog? And really there's loads of people who have different ideas. I want to be honest, I have read so many books this week trying to figure this out. Commentaries. I think, on Google you get those weird articles by the people with the crazy hair. I was even going to those. I was like, maybe someone knows what happened here. And I've kind of categorized all of these answers into three categories. There's basically three ideas that people have about what was happening. The first is that it's a mistranslation of the Bible. That the word dog doesn't actually mean dog. It literally means puppy or pet dog. And that's nice because puppies are nice. And so maybe it was like an affectionate thing, like, hey, I'm not here for you, puppy. Like maybe he was being nice, but that doesn't really make much sense because, it helps with Jesus not calling someone a dog, but it makes absolutely no sense in the context of the story. It doesn't make sense in what Jesus was saying. And also, when we think about dogs, we think about Labradors, golden retrievers, spaniels and things, cute kind of house dogs where you throw balls and they look at you and you have to go and get the ball and bring it back if you're anything like the dog we used to have. But dogs are nice and kind to us. But in Israel, dogs would live in packs on the edge of the town. And they would go and they would scavenge and they would raid for food. Dogs were scary. I went to India once and they had a pack of dogs on the edge of the village, and honestly, even just walking near to them, I felt my heart going the whole time. Like for them, dogs wasn't like this kind, nice poodle. It was a dirty scavenger on the edge of town. It wasn't, even if it was a baby one, it wasn't endearing. But that's the first answer. Maybe that helps you with this. The second answer that people give is that Jesus had a change of heart in the middle of this story. A lot of the time when we think about Jesus, we put a lot of focus on his divinity. You know, we believe Jesus was fully God. The Bible tells us that we see God through Jesus. He is our window to God. But what we often don't think about as much is that Jesus was a man, and he was fully human, and that he laid aside his majesty, and that he acted as one of us. So when we read miracles in the Bible, they're not a sign of his divinity. His miracles are actually the sign of a human responding to God with faith. And that's why he says to us, these things and greater will you do. Jesus doesn't feed 5,000 people because he's God. He feeds 5,000 people because he's obedient to God. And he lets God dictate his life. And so the question you could ask is, how does Jesus hear God's voice? Well, what if Jesus hears God the same way that you and I do? Through reading the scriptures, through prayer and personal revelation, and through the people around us. Have you ever had a moment when somebody says something to you and you're like, that wasn't you, that was God's voice. That spoke to me. And some people say maybe this happened to Jesus. Like God had told him to start with the Jews, and that was his ministry, that was his mission. And it's not that he was really being rude, but he was focused. But then something about this encounter revealed God's voice to him. And it changed his heart. It changed his focus. And he realized that actually his ministry was even bigger than he had before. And maybe this is what's happening. And I'll tell you why I don't think that that's what's happening. The reason I don't think that's the answer is because when I read the rest of Jesus' teaching, it seems to be very inclusive. So Jesus, at the beginning of his ministry, he reads Isaiah 61 in a temple. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to proclaim the good news, sight to the poor, freedom for the oppressed." And when all the people around him were listening to that, you know what they were thinking? They were thinking, that's us. He's come for the Jews. But then when Jesus gives examples of what that looks like, every example is a non-Jewish town or a non-Jewish nation. And they get really, really angry with him, and they decide they want to stone him because he's being so offensive. So it doesn't seem to me like this is the turning point for Jesus. It seems like he always knew this, which is why I come to the third option. And this is my preferred option of the three. The third option is that Jesus was forming her faith. That Jesus, from the moment he met her, the moment he saw something deeper inside of her. And that this whole encounter was to draw out her faith to the surface. That he was pushing, he was coaxing her. It's really difficult when we read the Bible to read tone into things. And tone makes a huge difference. I have a rule. If you email me, I always try to imagine you emailing me with a smile on your face, so that I don't get offended if the tone seems harsh. When we read the Bible, it's impossible for us to know what was Jesus' tone. Was it "you dog" and angry? Was it "you dog" with a little bit of a sparkle in his eye and a wink? Was it "you dog" in a neutral tone? I don't know what he sounded like, and the truth is we can never know. And I don't want to pretend that we can read something in there that we can't. But the way that he said this could give it a completely different tone and a completely different feel. But what I do know is that she wasn't offended, that she wasn't angry, that she didn't take this as an offensive thing to her. I personally think that she maybe was even in on it a little bit, that she saw something that Jesus was doing, pulling something out of her, that she decided she would give. I think that Jesus used that moment not just to draw her faith out, but to point out something to his disciples that they'd completely missed. That he went along with their argument just to turn it upside down and to show how wrong they were. And to show that there is this thing about faith which they'd completely missed. That it's not about the ones who have it all together. It's not about the strongest. It's not about the ones who don't make mistakes, but that it's about the people who are going to come to God with humble confidence. And the second question that I have is, what is it that really made this woman's faith so great? What is it that we can learn from her that changes absolutely everything? And the question I think that I think of when I read her story is the question of, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Do I deserve Jesus to bless me? Do I deserve him to heal me? Do I deserve him to come and step up in my life? I mean, I might believe that he might work in your life, but do I believe that he will stand up for me? I had a moment a couple of months ago when I was invited to go to Romania, and they invited me to come and speak at a men's conference as the keynote speaker. I've never been a keynote anything in my life. And they were like, we want to pay for your flights, take you out to Romania. We're going to get you to do the main talks at the conference. We then want you to stay and speak at church on Sunday. Huge, amazing church in a cinema, a little bit like ours, except huge and big. And I had this moment. I was like, am I worthy? I mean, am I good enough? Can I actually go and share? And can I be a keynote speaker? What do I have to share with these guys? Like, why didn't they get somebody better than me? Why didn't they get somebody? Why did they ask me? And I had this crisis of confidence in that moment. And it's like there's this internal committee that goes around my head. I don't know if you get this as well, but it starts reminding me of every time that I've failed, every time that I've had something go wrong. It reminds me of everything that everybody has ever said to me in my life. It brings it back up, and it's like, what happens if you go up and you don't know what you're talking about? What if you go up and then God doesn't turn up? What if no one is moved? What if no one laughs when you tell jokes? Don't you remember that time when you bombed in church? Don't you remember that time when you did an altar call and literally everyone looked at you like you were crazy? Don't you remember that time when you did prayers before a service and it was just awkward and silent? Don't you remember? And I had these voices that come round and round my head. And sometimes they're just like secret fears, right? And other times they're echoes of things that people have spoken over my life when I was younger. I remember my brother Seth. He is, bar none, the most naturally talented musician I've ever met in my life. He's absolutely incredible. He was grade 8 before he was 10. You know, this kid was amazing. And at church they had an open mic night, and he said he wanted to play a song. And he played the piano and he sang. And a guy came up to him at the end and said, Seth, your piano skills are amazing. Shame about your voice. I mean, ouch. Why did he need to say that? And those hurtful comments that people say about us, they don't just happen once, they echo. Great personality, shame about her face. You know, great confidence, shame she's not got too much going on upstairs. You know, you'll never really be academic, you'll never really be clever, you'll never be a leader. You know, you're just a woman, you're just an addict, you're just a failure. You're not good enough. And these go around and around and around. And they stop us from pushing forward. And we need to recognize that failure is an event, it's not an identity. That Jesus will take every single one of your mistakes and that he will use your mess and turn it into your message. Yeah. It doesn't matter how hard you fall, it doesn't matter how messed up your past is, that Jesus will come and make your future bright. That's what the gospel is all about, isn't it? That's what the cross is. That you are not what people say about you. You are what Jesus says about you. And what I see in this woman is faith that looks like humble confidence. I mean, she's humble. Jesus says you're a dog, and she just says, okay, if I am a dog, I'm not going to fight for myself. But she's confident because her confidence isn't in herself, it's in God. Yeah. And she says, even if I can't do this, Even if I don't have the words to speak to these people, even if this is awkward, even if they're asking me to do something that I could never do, I can be humble yet confident because it is not about me. You know, God doesn't call the strongest. He doesn't call the most charismatic. He doesn't call the people who are the best. He calls the people who have humble confidence. It's not about pushing yourself down. It's about raising the name of Jesus up. It's about saying, I can look at this situation. I can see it for what it is. I know I don't deserve this breakthrough, but I also know the character of God. And I know that the love that he has pours out upon me. So I can walk anywhere and be humble, yet confident. I think that the church should be the most confident people in society. That we should be able to walk anywhere into any room and have something to say because it isn't even about us. Because we know that we walk hand in hand with the creator of the universe. We know that his character is good and love. And so we have humble confidence even when it scares us. Even when it doesn't seem right and it doesn't seem fair. Second thing I see in her. I see that great faith shines in adversity. That your faith will shine, not when your life is at its easiest, but when it's actually at its hardest. There's a story I was listening to this week by a guy, has anyone heard of Satchel Paige? No? He's the first professional black baseball player in America. And he was a pitcher, and what would happen is he would stand up to pitch, and every time he threw the ball, all the crowds behind him from the opposite teams would start shouting racist comments at him. And the batsmen would shout racist things, and they would slur him, and they would put him down, and they would attack him in the hope that it would put him off his game, that it would break his confidence, that it would make him give up and make him stop, and say, just attacked him. And there's this one amazing story which I love, where the team had 4 of their best batsmen who all before the game, they basically were just trying to put him off and saying the worst things to him. And then when these 4 stood up, he turned around to his fielders and told them to sit down. Told the people on the bases to just go to the side and not even play. He basically got rid of all of the fielders, and then he picked up the ball and he struck every single one of them out, one after another. And just this incredible, inspiring guy. But after the match, a reporter said to him, "What do you do when people speak to you like this? How do you respond?" And he said, "What I do is I love like I've never been hurt. I love that. I love like I've never been hurt. I put aside the past, I put aside the hurt, I put aside everything that everybody has ever said to me, and I decide that whatever the situation, whatever happens, I'm going to choose to love like I've never been hurt." I was reading someone's Instagram this week. They said that life is 10% about what happens to you and 90% about how you react. You know, it's not the storm that's the problem. It's not the words that's the problem. It's how you react. And I think that in the middle of the darkest situations, that's when faith shines brightest. It's not when there's no problems. It's when the problems are the hardest. And the third thing that I see in her is that great faith provokes great faith. Faith inspires more faith, and more faith, and more faith. You know, the disciples, they went into this story believing that they were superior, believing that they were better, believing that she was dirty, she was nothing, that she was a dog. That was their belief. And what happens when they leave this story? They go from this one encounter to going and serving other people from other cultural backgrounds, praying for people who just a day before they used to look down on. Now they're serving them, and they're building them up, and they're encouraging them, they're feeding them, like their lives had been transformed. I think that the closer you get to Jesus, the more he is going to take you from levels of love to levels of love to levels of love. He's just going to expand your capacity to care. See, Christianity isn't static. We don't just stay in one place. We should be constantly pushing, constantly growing, constantly developing. I think that we should be looking back to the things that we believed a year ago and saying, I don't believe that anymore. Because I have grown. I have got to know Jesus more. I am on a new level. Christianity is constantly moving. But it's moving in the direction of faith, love, and hope. And so we start to say, I now realize that God's heart is for that person like I never saw it before. All of a sudden I recognize that Jesus does love Jews and he loves Gentiles. He does love Muslims. He does love people from different cultures. He does love people who are awkward. He does love asylum seekers. He does love the homeless. He does love the rich. He does love the awkward. He does love bankers. He does love Boris Johnson. You start to realize that the people we thought were unlovable are actually loved the most. And that Jesus' heart is for them. And then that provokes something in other people as well. You know, I love hearing stories of faith because it provokes the faith in me. Because faith creates faith, creates faith. I speak about it a few times. My brother at the moment is battling cancer. And I love Dave and Becky talking to them 6 months ago. They had a friend who was battling cancer. And they just stood with faith. And Dave, he literally was like, I'm not even bothered. Because I know that Jesus will heal him. Because Jesus has healed before and he's going to heal again. And just that faith and that confidence inspired me. And now while I'm here and I see my brother, my faith is bigger. Because my faith isn't just on my circumstance. It's not just on my stories. It's of David's story. And I see what God does in other people, and I use that as the platform to build my life. And so when I get a breakthrough, when I see God do something in my life, I want to be the kind of person that shares it with you. Because I hope that every battle and every victory inspires you, so that your faith will grow. And that you can step out into bigger things than you ever thought or imagined. I believe God has got such incredible plans for you that he doesn't even tell you, because they would terrify you. But as you step forward and you say, you know what, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I believe if I just get one crumb from you, that's all that I need. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know where the breakthrough's going to come. I know that my marriage is falling apart. I know that my business is failing. I know that I'm struggling with these thoughts, with these addictions. But I believe one crumb from you will be everything that I need. And so I will step forward one step at a time. Even if I just have one crumb of faith, I will take that. And as I see him break through, I will share. Because maybe my crumb could inspire your crumb. And then between us, we might start to have something that looks like a basket. And then as we share the stories of what God does in our lives, as we share the stories with each other, as we share the stories outside of the church, I believe that is when we see a movement of faith. That is when we see God do more than we could possibly hope, ask, or imagine, because it crescendos, it avalanches, it overflows from outside of every single one of us. Please stand with me. What does your faith look like today? So often we think that faith is synonymous with perfect confidence, but that's not true. For me, a lot of the time, I have like 50% faith. I mean, it might be what Jesus is saying, but it might not. And I step forward and I give it my best, but I want to be real, it's 50% faith. But I believe that if I have a crumb and I give that to Christ, that he can multiply it. I don't know what you're facing in your life today. I don't know what your battles are. I don't know what your struggles are. I don't know what people have said over you. But I believe that Jesus' words for you today is, dear woman, dear man, I love you. I want to answer your prayers. I want to be there for you in the middle of this. I want to bring you out. I believe that if you humble yourself and have confidence, not in your awesomeness, not in your worth, but in Jesus' worth, that he is worthy. That is the kind of faith that Jesus calls great faith. That is the kind of faith that he can use. You know, notice that the breakthrough didn't come when she was whining. It didn't come even when she's calling out to Jesus. The breakthrough that she needed came when he provoked a moment of faith. I want to ask you, in your situation, whatever you're facing, whatever your battle is, what would a crumb of faith look like for you? What would a tangible step where you say, do you know, I know that this is crazy, I don't even know what's going to happen, I know that I can't do this, but this isn't going to be based on me. This is going to be based on you, on your character, on your strength, on your provision. Lord, I pray that we will be a crumb of faith kind of church. That despite the situations, despite the things that people might say, despite our reputation, that we will always look to you. We will always realize that even one breath from you, even one word from you, even one prayer from you is enough to change everything for us. So we humble ourselves and we lift your name high. Amen.